Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host Alex, and with me I have Dan. How are you, Dan?
Yeah, look, I'm all right. It's just about the end of the season, and it's
Feeling
been a
like it?
while. It's been a wild ride.
Yeah.
We're almost there, and we've pretty much met. I think it'd be interesting to see exactly what our predictions were for the from the beginning of the season, but I'd say we'd all be pretty happy to have at least reached survival. So
Yeah, that's right. I think, yeah, I'll have to pull out the clip of it for the review that we do in the next week or two, just to see exactly what we were saying. I think we were all pretty happy just to not be bottom three. I don't think anyone was sort of expecting mid-table or playoffs or anything like that. Even though I remember after that 4-1 win against Preston, I think Lewis Potter came out and said, we've got an eye on the playoffs. We're going to do everything we can to, and it unraveled pretty quickly. But look, I mean, two polarizing games to talk about today, to sort of show sort of I guess how inconsistent teams can be this time of season when you don't have a whole lot to play for. We'll start with that positive result against Reading, which was 2 weeks ago now. Wisdom teeth out last week for me meant we didn't have an episode. So we do have the pleasure of at least balancing out the Bristol City result with this Reading game to discuss. Um, a fantastic result at home. It was sort of well overdue, and I think we were just saying it's our biggest winning margin at home all season. Equaled our margin of victory against Preston and Peterborough away from home, and 2 goals for KLP is a pretty awesome way to essentially sign off the home season.
yeah, look, it was really good overall performance, nice and strong, and it sort of it gave me the impression that after that game that we were actually gonna finish the season with a bit of a roar, and obviously we'll talk about how that's sort of turned into a bit of a whimper soon, but there was lots of really good signs in it, and I think we'd been building up over the previous few games, like heading towards a really good overall performance and heading into a really strong end of the season, and which was we've talked about like how important that would be building for next season and all of those sorts of things. So there was lots of good signs heading into that game, and then that game obviously was a really good result with like really good performances across the park. So it was really good, yeah, in that regard. But sort of the gloss is taken off by what followed afterwards. But we'll get to that in due course.
Yeah, certainly. Look, I think just on the positives in that game, I think especially, and we've been talking about him in recent episodes, but Ali, whether he was up top or out wide, was just brilliant. I thought able to win the ball back, play the ball through to Lewis Potter or Eves or Honeyman or whoever was kind of overlapping and running up past him, was really fantastic to see. And I saw a bit of discussion, which I thought was really spot on. And we don't talk enough about, I think, Shotter's influence on the squad and the players that he's developed in his time at the club. When you look at like a Fleming, for instance, who
Mm.
wasn't getting a whole lot of game time under McCann, through injury and other, elders form and things like that. Fleming's come on in leaps and bounds. The way that he's eased Ali in his first season in England, I think, has been really good because he could have very easily given him 2, 3, 4 starts in a row at the start of his season. And granted, he had a few injuries which didn't help things, but the fact that he kind of kept him out of that limelight and didn't let the expectations grow too much on him, just gave him a few cameos, let him ease into it, learn the pace, kind of get his feet under the desk, so to speak, has sort of shown in these last few games when he's gotten the starts that he's actually started to adapt pretty well.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, and probably a fair, a pat on the back for Shotter's management or man management approach to that specific situation. I think you're right. Like there were in the cameos that we saw early on, there were some brief flashes, but it sort of felt like he wasn't quite there. But for whatever reason, that his release, so to speak, releasing him out from the get go, that seemed to be timed to just about perfection because that first start he got, he was very impressive, and I think it was only his second start that he
Yeah.
scored. And he's been a very consistent threat in the few games since then. So, I think he just he's almost like having at the moment he's been like having a Honeyman in the full like as an actual striker. He is full of energy and he's running and chasing and putting pressure on. And I think was that how he got his first goal? Was that, wasn't it? It was the pressuring on a
Yeah.
back pass or something. Yeah, and then
Yeah,
like,
that
was
I
it?
don't think it was a back. I think it was a through ball, but it was that sort of play, yeah, where he just
Mm,
kind of like cut it
I
past the
could
keeper and got in. Yeah,
wasn't it?
maybe it was a
I
back
thought it
pass. Yeah.
was I thought it was a pass from their wide defender into the centre back or the keeper, and then he snuck in and got a toe around and rolled
It
it
might have
in.
been. Yeah.
But I mean, maybe that was a different goal. Maybe it wasn't his first one. I can't remember, but something. Yeah, but I think he's been just really, really impressive in the way, and I think again for another really young player, because you forget he's only 20 or something as well, isn't he?
21, I think. Yeah, 20,
Yeah.
21,
So
something like that. Yeah.
there's a lot actually. That what it tempers out all of that gung ho, 100-mile-an-hour attitude is actually quite a lot of maturity shown, in key moments. Particularly the game against Reading, was able to win a free kick, which then, a bit of uh, fumbling and bumbling in the box, and Jones was able to knock it in. But I think just he's acclimatizing really, really well, and I haven't seen the like official statement about that we've taken the option to acquire him on a permanent basis. But if that comes or when that comes, it's going to be a really good piece of business, and I think he'll be a player who will offer us a lot next season.
I think a Fenerbahce board member or someone like that tweeted out to say he
Mm.
could confirm that's happened, but there's been nothing from the. I
Mm.
suspect it's gonna be one of those where almost as soon as the season finishes, like
Yeah.
that sort of first week after the season finishes, we're gonna just announce it because it's such a formality. But it's probably just waiting for the season to finish at this point.
Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of things that'll be announced pretty much as
Yeah,
soon as the
you know,
season
that's
finishes.
yeah,
I feel like there'll be a lot of players, or not necessarily a lot, but a few players that will, have their loan deals ended, and we won't be taking their option, and a
yeah.
couple that we'll take on, and a couple of players that will get announced as being, not offered new contracts, and there'll be a lot of news very quickly, I suspect.
Yeah, I think you're right on that one. It's gonna be a very interesting first couple of weeks after the season. Um, you mentioned there the Jones goal. I think that was the first goal a centre back scored for us this season. So it's good that we actually finally got one, considering we've been playing with three centre backs for most of the season, or I guess three quarters of the season, or whatever it's been. Um, Honeyman free kick in, as you said, a bit of fumbling and bumbling in the box. But essentially two assists for Honeyman on the day, is to go with that first one for Lewis Potter as well. Good to see Jones on the score sheet.
Yeah, I think was it. It was good to see him. I think it's been like crazy watching how close like Greaves has come. I
Yeah.
think particularly in the first half of the season, that sort of thing seems to have steadied off in the second half. But that first half of the season, the amount of times he was getting into the box on a corner or a free kick, and then heading it just narrowly wide or whatever, and just couldn't quite get it to go in, or was wild. So it was good to see one finally get in. And I think was it Reading or one of the last couple of games we've played, their centre backs were scoring all their goals. I can't remember if it was Reading or someone else that we
Cardiff.
played.
I
Was
think
it
Cardiff.
Cardiff?
Yeah.
So yeah, and I was just like, that's great. They'd had the majority of their goals scored by their three centre backs or something crazy, and I was like, what? But yeah, anyway, yeah, it's good to see him get one, and I think the passion and everything that he showed, and I think the comments afterwards about how much he's loving life here and everything is all really good as well. And I think, yeah, I think since he's come back in, I think over Bernard, he's been quite quite impressive as well overall.
No doubt, yeah, absolutely. And KLP with two goals. I think there's a few scouts in the stands for this one. I think David Moyes supposedly was there, as well as Brentford and Spurs representatives. So probably putting on a bit of a show for them as well. But good to see him get two goals, get into double figures, and he's kind of capped it off last night with being named Players Player of the Season, Player of the Season, Supporters Player of the Season, sort of picking up all the awards in the same way that Honeyman did last year. So a pretty good season for Lewis Potter in the end.
Yeah, and I think they were two really well taken goals, and I think he's his development this year, where at times I think we have been critical of maybe his ability to stand up, on a more consistent basis, perhaps, or like in the games that really mattered when we were desperate for points and things, and maybe he didn't, in a few moments. But I think overall, for his first full season in the championship, to bag, was it now 11 goals or whatever?
11, yeah.
Yeah,
And when you
and plus a few assists, and
yeah.
in a team that really has struggled to score goals for large portions of the
And
season. I think.
he's probably played about a third of the season at wingback as well.
Yeah, well, that's true as well. I hadn't even considered the positional
Yeah.
influence on that, but I think, and I mean, I don't know what it's like, but I'm thinking there's probably not that many other 21-year-olds that scored 11 goals in the championship this year.
Yeah.
So that's a factor as well. He's only young, and if he stays for next season and does that again, then I probably expect that he would be able to get a couple more. If we're going to
I'd be
improve
sort
the
of
squad again, like you'd be.
looking at 15 or
So
20 goals next season, probably.
yeah, so I think it's been really good progression from him over the last two seasons as a whole, and I think to think of how he was in those first few appearances where he came on, and yes, admittedly he nabbed a goal, and I think in one of those early appearances at the back end of that last championship campaign, but I think he has come along so much, and I guess it comes back to one of the things where one of our strengths really is, and something that we need to continue is that academy. We are producing some really good quality players, and even over the last few days, there's been lots and lots of either City players that are loaned out or ex-City players that have been involved in promotions and making playoffs and stuff all across the football league. So lots of players out there doing some really good stuff, and um, yeah, so I think potentially good times ahead if they can get back amongst it and get involved and force their way into black and amber shirt.
Yeah, speaking of loans, though, I suspect Matt Ingram would have liked a better start to his loan spell at Luton, letting in 6 goals. Was it no 7 goals against
Seven.
Fulham? Yeah, not a
Um,
fantastic one, but
yeah, no, not the best, but um, some people are saying that's marking the end of his city career or whatever. But I don't necessarily see it as anything as
if
as
anything, I think it shows how
hu-
highly he's rated in the league. That he's sort of
yeah.
a promotion chasing side has said, "Can we get Matt Ingram on loan because he's a fantastic
Mm.
keeper that's probably available."
Yeah, and I think that's something I think maybe we've talked about just in our chat. I think in a less public forum, but that there's lots of these comments about how Baxter, is far superior to Ingram, and we should get rid of Ingram and make signing Baxter a priority. And there are elements to that which I agree with. That I think signing Baxter he'd be a great addition to the squad moving forward. We know what he offers. We know, and he's young and he's only going to improve. But I think right now, or is my opinion, that those two, Baxter and Ingram, are fairly comparable in terms of their performance levels this season. I think that's shown when, they both, been able to, accumulate multiple clean sheets. They've both been pulling off match or like goal saving, goal making, goal saving, preventing goals. I don't know how to word that best, but um, and both really just performing really well. And I think having two keepers at that level where they're both are genuine options to be that first keeper is what's propelling them to play so high at such a high level and so consistently. Sure, we saw like a fair bit of a lull from Baxter on the weekend, a pretty average performance, some brain snaps, however you want to describe it. But I think you're right when that of you think like of all the teams that are now no longer eligible for playoffs, which is all keepers that then are available for Luton to say we need to grab one of these on a temporary on it for a game or two. Maybe it's 6 games or whatever, and to pick out Ingram as the one that they want, I think does show how highly he's rated, how well he's performed this season, and if anything, it goes, well, that's someone that we should keep. If other people want him, we should want him as well. Really,
Yeah, absolutely.
make someone pay for him at the very least.
Yeah, no, that's right. So I'll give my MVP votes for this one. We can talk briefly about that Bristol City game, and then we'll move on because I don't think there's a whole lot to talk about with that Bristol City game. But I went KLP for the 3 votes. I think the 2 goals puts him sort of head and shoulders above in that sense. But really well taken for the first and for the second, as you said. I went Ali for the 2. I thought a fantastic game from him with his work rate, and I went Jones for the 1 vote just for finally nabbing his goal.
Look, yeah, when I first I saw what you were going to vote, and I was like, oh, that's a very good Like, I can't argue with those picks. But then we've been having this discussion, and I might just switch Honeyman in for Ali. I think with a couple of assists and actually just again a strong performance. One of the ones that we were so used to seeing him deliver for long periods where he sort of maybe faded off a little bit. We've talked about over the last maybe month or so. But again, that was a really nice, strong performance against Reading. So I'm going to give 2 points to him and keep KLP on 3 and Jones on 1.
Good shout. Yeah, look, talking about the Bristol City game now, Eves came into the lineup, and I was actually quite excited by that change because I've sort of been saying on here that I've been interested in seeing what would happen if we had a sort of a tall, strong hold-up striker next to Ali to sort of play him in, let him sort of run the lines, sort of press high on opposition's defense. And it was pretty disappointing that we didn't really get to see much of that at all. And I do wonder if perhaps the shape of the side where Ali and KLP basically, I think, pretty much played in behind Eves, just didn't work the way that Shotta probably wanted it to, and not helped, as you said before, by those sorts of the brain fades from Baxter and the defense in general. Hard to know what that's down to, whether it's just the fact that it's the end of the season and there's not as much to play for. I did sort of cynically joke, having watched the I think it's the League of 72 did a feature on Baxter saying how he's still really set on wanting to play for Chelsea, wanting to be their keeper, and sort of saying if Hull comes in with an offer for a permanent deal, he'll do what's best for him and he'll sign for the club because he loves being here, but that he's still set on being the Chelsea number one. The cynic part of me does say, oh, I wonder if he's put in a poor performance when he knows there's nothing on the line, but he knows that when we start thinking in the summer, do we want to sign him? That there's a very fresh memory of a pretty poor performance to say that maybe he'll go back to Chelsea. But I don't know. It's a hard one to, it's end of the season. There's not a whole lot to play for. It's probably just an off day.
Yeah, I think there seems to be a couple of elements that have come out after the game where Shotta had apparently made a comment about how Bristol played direct or something, but then Pearson doesn't believe that they played direct. He believes they play on the counter, and he said that Shotta's obviously misrepresented
Right.
or misunderstood the way they play, and that's what got them caught out. Now I don't know whether that's true or not. Perhaps the analysis, was it's entirely possible that the analysis they picked out to watch, they've seen a long ball or something and said, oh well, they play direct, so we'll play a high line and we'll do this and we'll get Baxter out high to clean that up. But if there was an error in that analysis, which happens, then that would account for essentially why we were torn up, because we were set up to play a different team.
Yeah.
So again, I don't know whether that's accurate or whether it's just smoke and mirrors from different managers and whatever. But
And I think, in fairness, I did hear that I think Bristol City have scored the fourth most goals in the division, but they've conceded like the second most or something like that. Like they've got a really sort of Jekyll and Hyde side in that sense. So they do score a lot of goals. It's not as if this 5-0 was out of the blue for them. Like they do seem quite a heavy scoring side.
yeah, I'm not sure exactly what it was that set us up so poorly. It seemed like because Honeyman was deployed deeper, wasn't he?
Yeah.
In like where Slater would normally say start.
Because it was
And
basically just Honeyman and Smallwood,
yeah,
wasn't it, as the only two? And then it was,
yeah.
Ali, KLP.
And
Yeah.
it seemed like that, Bristol was pretty fairly able to play their way through the midfield and then play it in behind. So admittedly, I only watched pretty much till about 5 minutes after we went 3-0 down. And then I went to bed like a fair weather fan. Shame on me. But it doesn't really seem like it improved that much in the second half, but I can't really. I mean, we conceded another 2 after
Yeah.
halftime, but I don't really know whether the performance improved, whether we adjusted tactics or what. So it's sort of really hard to make a final
Yeah.
assessment. But
I only had one eye on it. The only thing I'd say was it was cool to see the City supporters in the away end all dressed up for the final away game of the season, having a bit of a party, which was fun to see.
yeah, and I think like you put it all in context. Yes, it's disappointing, and we would have been really nice to have finished, with some nice form, going into the end of the season. But the goal was survival. The goal was safety. We achieved that. So it sort of is, sadly, they are sort of nothing games now. So does it really, 5-0 looks real bad, but does it really matter?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, and look, I think that there won't be MVP votes for this game because I think we were struggling to come up with even one player who would have got points for this one. So we'll move on then, and we'll do our Who Am I game. So this week I've come up with a player where, because you've been quite good at them lately, and I do sort of have to find that range of what's too difficult or what's easier. I am going to be curious to see how you go with this one. I think you should get it, but it's definitely a trickier one to get. So we'll see how we go. The first clue is I made 49 league appearances for City and scored 6 goals.
49. All right. I'm feeling like, and now I can't remember any of their names, but I'm feeling like maybe one of those strikers that we signed like at the beginning of Slutsky's freaking one of those. What the hell's his name? I don't know. Anyway, I'm never going to get this because I can't remember any names, and I'm probably thinking of the full wrong ballpark like area completely.
You're in the right area of the pitch. I'll give you that. Years not so much correct. So I'll go. I joined City in 2015 and left in 2018, and I'm Norwegian.
But I feel this is gonna be. This is why I hate
So
this.
there's a couple of players that this could be. So that's why I was able to give you the nationality because I think we had a couple.
All I can think of is like freaking Danish players, and like I can't think of any. Like I can't connect in my mind any players to Norway, and it's doing my head in. So that was.
So 2015's just before. So that was Bruce's last season.
Yeah.
And 2018 was, I want to say Adkins, but it might have been. Yeah, no, I feel like it would have had to be Adkins.
It's not. I am unsure of if I've got his nationality right, but it's not like Diamande, is it?
Yeah, spot on. Well done. I was thinking because we had Henriksen joined 6 months later, who's also Norwegian. So I thought that was
his name popped into my head, but then I was like, was he Norway or was he Denmark? And I was like, oh, I can't remember.
Because then I was going to say the next clue was going to be I was a striker and wore the number 20 in our Premier League season. I forgot that he'd wore the number 20, so he must have worn it just before Bowen, which is kind of cool. And I think if you'd gotten really stuck, I might have given you a clue about the bicycle kick or something.
Yeah.
No, that's a good one. That's a good pull. I thought that would be a bit more of a tricky one. But well done. Okay. And then just to finish things off, we've got our preview of the Forest game, which, it's a bit of a shame it's not as noteworthy as it might have been if the result this morning had gone a different way. But they're now 6 points behind Bournemouth, so they can't make the automatics. So this is a bit of a dead rubber now. I don't know if you followed. There's been a bit of trouble with Forest fans trying to buy tickets in the home end, which I think is probably going to die down now, which is a bit funny. But I think there's been a few comments of, little old Hull could use our money. Why don't they let us buy tickets in the home end? They're so ungrateful, blah, blah, blah. So can't be too unhappy that they lost this morning after that.
Yeah, look, I think it's really good from the club in terms of fan safety and all those sorts of things to be on top of this and checking in on like where some of these tickets are being purchased from, and like the names associated and addresses and everything, and saying like you must have made a mistake. Here's your money back. Try again. Other end of the stadium next time. But like, because I think with the arrogance that has already been shown by the fans, by those Forest fans before the game even kicks off, I can only see like if they manage to weasel their way into, if any of them manage to weasel their way in any sort of significant way. There's a little pocket of them in there, and managed to get in amongst the home end, then I can just see trouble of some sort.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. And I think it's good by the club to say no, we don't want that. There's there's plenty of stadium there for them to sit in, so I don't know why they want to sit in the home end for any reason other than that they just want to go and cause trouble. And so
I saw the comment after this morning's game that City should have, after that result, tweeted out saying that they were releasing another 5,000 seats for the Forest fans, and see how many of those get taken up now that it doesn't mean anything. Would have been quite funny. But yeah, look, I mean, on the game itself, much like the Bristol City game, much like the Reading game, I think it's going to be very much a dead rubber game. Not a whole lot to play for. I'm hoping it tends more towards the Reading side of things than the Bristol City side of things. Finish off the season at home well, sort of set the tone for next season would be nice. But other than that, I guess, just testing ourselves against one of the better sides in the division, I guess, is the only sort of interest in this one.
Yeah, I think as you say, like, it'd be a good performance. I don't necessarily mean that has to be a win, but a really good performance, in front of what should be a really big crowd. For last home game of the season, should be really good. Try and get a really good atmosphere to get everyone excited for next season. But yeah, I think this game obviously still matters in some regard more to Forest than it does to us. There's still still a shake-up that could happen between third and fourth and fifth and sixth. So if they have a preference for who they want to play, or because I don't know what their record is like against the other teams that are in the playoffs now, but if they've had 2 wins against Luton, but they've only had a draw and a win against Sheffield or something dumb like that, maybe they would want to finish third so that they can, or put, play off against whatever. But it's all very.
Yeah, I'm guessing that going in on the back of 2 losses isn't what they're going to want either. So they're going to be wanting to go in with some sort of form, even if the game doesn't mean a whole lot.
Yeah, I think you always, especially going into playoffs and where they become crucial fixtures with so much riding on them, and you have to be performing at your best. You definitely want to go in there with some level of form. Heading into the playoffs on 2 losses, I can't think of probably anything worse than that, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, because it's interesting. I mean, I guess I was just thinking as well, maybe they'll rest players because if they've got a few injuries or something, but it's a really weird one because, like you say, you don't want to go in on the back of 2 losses, but you also want to be sensible. And if you've got a few niggles or something like that, you'd probably want to rest them. But I don't know. It's sort of a tough one because you still want your players to be sort of confident in form. Like you look at in League One, was it MK? Was it MK Dons? I think won their last game 5-0 or something, 6-0. And so you think, well, they're going into the playoffs, but they're going in on the back of a big win, which will give them a lot of confidence. You'd want to be going in like you think Sheffield United have to win to stay in the playoff places, so they'll be fighting in their game. You wouldn't want to be the side going in on the back of 2 losses, sort of a loss of momentum, disappointment at missing out on the automatics. So yeah, it'd be really tough to know what Forest are going to actually turn up and do on the weekend.
Yeah, and I at the end of the day, it's always like that. You never really know how a team's going to show up, how they're going to line up, how well they've prepared for that game. So I guess in that regard, it's not really any different to any other game. So
yeah,
just go out and do whatever we do. And I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know whether that means that Shotter's going to make, a raft of changes and just let, any of the players he's undecided about, or, whatever, have a run and show what they can do, or whether, maybe a 5-0 is enough to drop Baxter, and maybe Cartwright comes in for a start. Apparently he's been considering it anyway.
Yeah, I heard that.
I read something that, he's seriously considering Cartwright anyway. So
and Ingram's gone now, so
and Ingram's gone. So at the very least, Cartwright will make the bench. So if we're going to talk about changes for this weekend,
I was going to ask if there's any players in particular you'd want to see. I think Cartwright's a really good shout to see him in goal. I think if he's fit, and that's a big if, but Emmanuel coming back into the side, even if he's just off the bench for 5-10 minutes, would be awesome to see, just as a bit of a emotional lift.
And Williams as well, if he's
Williams,
fit. I'd love to see get the same 10 minutes or something at the end of the game would be really, really positive. I
Maybe
guess like in a
Wolves.
few, yeah. I mean, it's sort of one of those things. Like the game doesn't really mean anything to us. Sure, we want to perform well, but like play just about your best 11, and then just fill the bench with guys who are coming back from that injury layoff too. Because I can't think of anything worse than like having that injury and that taking you then out of the whole season, and then you have to wait all that plus the like off season and then the preseason before you get to like play again. So I know I wouldn't cope, and I'm only a lowly bloody like fifth division bloody nothing player at the local bloody Sunday league. But so I think if there if that option is there for those players, I think that would be really good. And again, like from that man management side, giving them just saying like, we'll give you the opportunity, get you out on the pitch before the end of the season, and I think that would be really good for them on a in terms of their their mental side and that well being off the pitch as well. That would really benefit them moving forward in their rehab and their preparations for next season.
Yeah, and probably Huddleston as well is the other one I'm thinking of, that to give him a farewell appearance. Even again, I mean, I don't know how many cameo appearances we're going to get off the bench, but he's another one that you give him 10, 15 minutes at the end. And I guess I'm trying to remember the first time he left the club, and I feel like with a lot of those guys, there was no chance to farewell them because they just got sold or cut after the season. So to give the fans a proper chance to say farewell to him, I think would be pretty awesome as well. Maybe he starts and comes off at halftime. I don't know, but he's another one that would be awesome to see on the pitch if we can.
Yeah, I think you're sort of right. He's been a really good servant for us, over the couple of times he's been contracted to us. Even admittedly, sure, he hasn't played a lot this time, but I think again, you look at the way that some of our midfielders have developed over the course of this season, and I think you have to attribute some of that to having someone of his class and his knowledge of the game, within that squad and within that dressing room. So I think, he's had a big footprint on this club, and, I can still remember that the goal, like, was it the 6-0 against Fulham, where he then, and that was the haircut celebration, and he ran off and they cut the lock of hair, and then he, shaved and donated to charity and all that sort of stuff. I can still remember that. So like, I think he's been a really good servant for us, and he does deserve, I think, and it's something that maybe hasn't happened to a few of those players that have been really good servants for us and then have sort of just unceremoniously disappeared from the club. It would be good to actually recognise and reward some of them. Come the weekend. Anyone who's
Anyway. Yeah. So I'm hoping that the game's on KO. I mean, it doesn't make a huge difference if it's iFollow or KO, but I if the automatics was still alive for Forest, no doubt it would have been. But I'll keep an eye out to see what the televised games are for that. But 9 p.m. it's a nice kickoff time for once. So looking forward to that one indeed. Any sense on the result? Anything that, I mean, you sort of already mentioned, as long as we put in a positive performance, I guess that's the main thing in this one.
Yeah, look, I'll be happy with anything that isn't a 5-0 thrashing. Pretty much.
Absolutely. I think that's just about
unless
it, isn't
it? Our way. If we thrash Forest 5-0, I'll be real happy.
That would certainly be a good way to finish off the season. Yeah, no doubt. Okay, well, I think that just about wraps things up. We'll be back probably next week, maybe the week after, to do a full review of the season with a couple of the guys. We'll announce our player of the season, who's sort of won the most MVP votes over the course of the season. But as always, if it's your first time listening or first time watching, hit like, hit subscribe, share the videos around, let us know what you thought of these games as well. But as always, thanks for joining me, Dan.
No worries.
And thanks everyone for listening in. We'll be back before too long to wrap up the season as a whole. But until then, come on, City.